I'll never forget when I saw her standing at the back of the church in her white wedding gown. And it brought me to tears then and still to this day.
Welcome to the show called Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. This is the show where we talk about everything homeschooling, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We want to affirm and encourage you in the decision to homeschool, challenge and inspire you to take it to new heights, and celebrate everything you get to experience along the way in this adventure of a lifetime. Today I'm your host, Davis Carman, and we have special guests, Jerry and Nancy McCaghren, and I will explain more in just a minute. Here's the deal, folks. It's February 1st, and this month, in the month of February, every Monday, we have a very special marriage series. It's the love month, you got Valentine's, and so the name of this series that you'll be hearing in Mondays in February is entitled Lord of the Rings. Now, you may be thinking about a book or a movie when you hear that, but this is actually a 4-part series presented by my father-in-law, Jerry McCaghren, way back in 2007. And today we have Jerry and Nancy McCaghren, my mother and father-in-law, Rachel's parents, and we're going to do a little introduction, hear a little bit about their story. This is their 60th wedding anniversary year, folks. So they got some experience, and we're just going to see what they have to say as a way to introduce this series and prepare us for the Lord of the Rings. So Rachel and I love to ask this question to folks, and I can't wait to hear it again. I call them Grandaunt and Pa. Grandaunt and Pa, tell me your love story. How did y'all meet? What's the genesis and the beginning of this 60 years together in marriage?
I dreamed of going to a Christian college all my life. So I fell in love with the idea of being in a Christian college. And when I saw Jerry McCaghren across the campus, I fell in love with him. And we first talked in the college library when he asked me what kind of flowers to buy another girl for her formal for the spring. Okay. Do you want to tell about the flowers?
Well, she told me that I should get some carnations.
Because they last and they
But what
smell
she
good.
said underneath her breath was, why don't you get her some hemlock and thorns?
Did I say that?
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't say that. But anyway, we walked to church for our first date, and this was back in the years of going steady. And in his romantic way, as we were getting our meal one evening in the cafeteria, he looked down at me and said, "You want to go with me?" And I looked up at him and said, "Are you serious?" And that was the beginning.
That's kind of where it began. And I just saw her. The thing that attracted me to, I call her, everybody calls her Sunny here on the island because of her personality. The thing that drew me to her was her personality. I mean, everywhere you see a crowd, she's going to be there. There's going to be conversation, music, and dancing. I mean, Sunday morning after church, I couldn't find her. I had to go back in and do a search to find her. There's always a crowd. People are drawn to her. And to me, that was the epitome of the kind of woman I want to spend my life with.
So we had a wonderful time dating at college and then the following summer.
So 60 years ago in 1964, September of that year, that was a big month for y'all. You began this journey, but tell me about the engagement. How did that go? And then your wedding day. What were some of the memories that you have from that day 60 years ago?
Well, I don't really know how to begin because everything was so convoluted. I was going to school. We were separated for a long period of time, but I gave her ring around Christmas time. Describe that day, babe.
Well, it was a magical snowy Christmas in Little Rock, and North Little Rock, actually, where I'm from. And Jerry came to visit for a week, and he gave me my engagement ring then. And after that, we had 2 visits before our wedding in September because he went back to West Texas to school, and we couldn't afford phone calls on our meager income, so we wrote letters just about every day during that period of time. And we were reunited on a Saturday before our wedding on Tuesday night, September the 1st, and he had to be in school 1,000 miles away the following Monday. And we didn't have any place to live. We had one piece of furniture, which was a stereo. We had our wedding gifts, so we had the smallest possible U-Haul, and we took off for West Texas, and we stayed with generous strangers. And he went to school, and my job search began, and God provided me a job right away, and sooner or later we found an apartment.
Yeah, but let's back up. You skipped the wedding.
Oh, it was...
Okay, I had been up in the north speaking to churches all during the summer. So when I came in, we had a rehearsal, and we hadn't seen each other for months.
Since May.
And yeah, when?
May.
Oh, yeah. So the beauty of the wedding, Davis, as you well know, she came from a very blue-collar family. I came from a family with 6 kids.
Church mice.
And we, you hear the phrase dirt poor. We couldn't even afford the dirt. And so when we got married, it was a very, very simple wedding. And I'll never forget when I saw her standing at the back of the church in her white wedding gown. And it brought me to tears then and still to this day. It started very simple. Our honeymoon was at the Ramada Inn just outside of Little Rock. And the funny story about this, Davis, and we told you about, but years later after we had our kids, we'd pass by the Ramada Inn on our way to see her folks. And I would say, okay, Rachel and Rowdy, be real quiet. We're going through a quiet zone. And they'd be quiet. And Rachel would say, well, why do we have to do this? What happened there? And Sonny said, not much. So that was kind of our honeymoon. But the thing about it was that I put that honeymoon on a Texaco credit card. And that's the way we began our life.
That's great. That's awesome. So I'm sure you have lots of memories and stories to tell of 60 years, but what are some of the highs and lows that immediately come to mind?
Davis, to me, some of the highs is the little churches that took us in. When I was going to school in West Texas, there was a church in Gale, Texas, and Sonny would go with me early in the morning before the sun came up, driving some 70 miles to get to the little church. And driving there was like, you just expected coming out of the canyons would be John Wayne chasing the Apaches. I mean, it was an abandoned, forlorn place, and the people were so inviting and so loving to us. Here we are, newlywed, starting our journey together, and yet the people were so kind and so gentle with us. I'd take the shotgun and we'd shoot rattlesnakes along the way, and our jackrabbits. And every Sunday night, just before we had the dismissal prayer, an old gentleman would stand and say, before we dismiss, I want to remind everybody that the rattlers are out. So be careful as you go to your car. So that to me, all the way through life, has just been people that God placed in our paths to help us.
Wonderful folks. And of course, the arrival of Rachel and her brother Delaney, who we call Rowdy, and who is a wonderful, fine husband and father nowadays, starting off with the name Rowdy, but that's what we called him. And he is dear. And we love going to their games and their activities and eventually their weddings. They've given us 9 grandchildren, and now we have 7 great-grandchildren. And just watching them grow up and the joy of having... by remote, following the homeschool adventure you guys have had, especially, it's really been, it's been amazing. It's just been amazing to watch you guys in your homeschool adventure, and then watch our girls out in West Texas grow up so well as well. So we've been incredibly blessed through all this. Pursuing Jerry's degrees was a great adventure.
Yep.
Yeah, that took years. We got to do youth ministry before there were youth ministers. So he was the preacher, the pulpit preacher, and we were also the youth ministers. So we all constantly had teenagers in and out of our house, and we were going all over the place with them, and the kids went with us for all that. And those were just times I wouldn't take anything in the world for.
We are blessed.
Yes.
Beyond measure.
Well, I've been married 37 years, and I know it's not all mountaintop experiences. So what are one or two of the low spots that you remember that God got you through and you had to figure out how to make this thing work?
There have been some real low. Of course, life is just mountain peaks and valleys. But one in particular, Davis, I spent a lot of time doing relief work, and I came back from Ethiopia in 1985. I'd been gone from the family for a couple of 3 months, and it was a Sunday morning, and I was worn out, I was exhausted, and I was running on empty. And early on that Sunday morning, our clock radio, remember clock radios, kicked in and said, we have this news today. North Dallas police reported that they found the body of, and they gave us the name of the person, from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in a North Dallas hotel. And Sonny shook me and said, did you hear that? You know who that is? Well, he just happened to be the man who had been investing all of our money for retirement. And he had embezzled every cent we had. And we had made sacrifices because we didn't want to end up like my dad with absolutely no retirement available. And I mean, I will never forget that. It just really put me in a bad place. And on top of that, the man left in a note asking me to conduct his funeral. I mean, he's embezzled everything and then to conduct his funeral. And we did our best, but God worked us through it. And that was a low time because we were 40-something years of age then, and time was closing in. So we've had to. Money's always been tight, always will be tight. But hey, we're still enjoying the walk.
Jehovah Jireh, he has always provided for us. So many times we have asked, now how did we get from here to there? Literally moves across the country that we have no memory of, and we knew we didn't have any money when we did that. And all we can say is God just took care of everything.
Yep.
I mean, he gave us a place to live when we moved across the country with no plans, no place to go, and no jobs, no income. We just knew we needed to go to the mission field and various other
And then
things.
coming back from the field, Davis, we had to start all over again after going to Africa. We had no car, we had no furniture, we had no house. The interest rate at that time, mortgage rate, was a little under 13%.
No, it was 16.
Was it 16? Well, she didn't tell me the truth.
Yes, this
So-
was the Carter years.
And so we had to start from scratch. And we unloaded trucks at night. I painted houses on my day off. And I was still pastoring a church of over 700. And then she worked a couple of jobs, just trying to get ahead. And those were tough days. And looking back, I don't know how we did it, but
We didn't do it. He did. I mean, he got the ends to meet somehow, and it's just been miraculous time after time. Not to mention, for me, the hardest part was our separations and the fact that Jerry's life has nearly, he nearly died on at least a half a dozen occasions that we've told the kids about. The kids always want to hear Pa tell one of his stories, and it's the main thing I was trying to focus on was being joyful and being competent and being there to support him. And it wasn't always easy, but God always provided what we needed.
Yep.
And
Well, you're clearly some level of a success story. You got 60 years to celebrate this year. So if you were to give some advice to young couples, let's say in the first 5 years of marriage, what would be some words of wisdom that you would share with them?
One of the things I would say, Davis, is don't play the victim in life. There's an old phrase my grandfather used to say, son, you got to skin your own skunks. And what he meant by that is you got to clean up your own mess. And in a marriage, you've got to own up whenever you mess up. And we have something here we've not shared with you and Rachel, but we call it the hat trick. When one of us has created an issue, and we've never really had a fight, but we've had some real strong discussions. But when one of us messes up, the other one has to go and has to put on the hat. And you know, when you wear this hat around the house, it has a way of diffusing and just bringing you back to, hey, is this really necessary? And I've had to sleep in this hat, you know, from time to time. But it has been so good to us. I would talk through circumstances, touch. Every day we begin with a hug and a kiss. We get in the kitchen, we wash dishes together. I haven't got her out to help me mow the lawn yet, but we do things together. And every day, I bet we will say, I love you 8, 10, 12 times. That is essential. Learn to listen. You know, James said, be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. The reason we often jump to wrath is because we never listened. And when we don't listen, we say the wrong words, which leads to wrath. And that's some of the things I'd say right off the cuff.
Yeah, and I would say to young people getting married, two major things. Number one, beware of red flags. Do not ignore red flags. You be very attracted to each other. You can have these very strong feelings, but use your head and identify the red flags and see how serious they are. And don't expect him to change. Don't expect her to change. And don't bet your life on it. So be very careful and be certain that both of you are focused on following Jesus together all the way to the end.
Well, I remember the advice you gave me when I asked you for Rachel's hand in marriage, and you said, are you prepared to help her on the journey to heaven?
That's right.
And that was a very sobering moment for myself to realize, well, I thought this was a pretty serious commitment, but okay, that takes it up another level. So thank you for that advice you gave me 37 years ago. And folks, this month, every Monday in February, you're going to get to hear Pastor Jerry McCaghren, my father-in-law, Rachel's dad, present this 4-part series entitled Lord of the Rings. Because when you think about marriage, it really is the ultimate fellowship of the rings.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us today. This has been Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. I'm your host, Davis Carman, and our special guests today have been Jerry and Nancy McCaghren, affectionately referred to in the Carman family as Grandnan and Pa. As always, we're walking by faith and enjoying the homeschooling adventure of a lifetime.
God bless.